ज्ञानमुद्रसमाराध्या त्रिपुरा श्रीवशङ्करी ज्ञानमुद्रा ज्ञानगम्या ज्ञानज्ञेयस्वरूपिणी योनिमुद्रा त्रिकण्डेशे त्रिगुणा अम्बा त्रिकोणधा अनघा अद्भुतचारित्रा वाञ्छितार्थप्रदायिनी अभ्यासादि च मगायाद्या षड्वातीतरूपिणी अव्याजकरुणामूर्ति अज्ञानकान्तदीपिका दशमुद्भावालोकविदिता सर्वानुल्लङ्घ्य शासनं श्रीचक्रराजनिकेतनं श्रीमत्त्रिपुरसुन्दरी श्रीशिवा शिवशक्त्यैकरूपिणी ललिताम्बिका श्रीशिवा शिवशक्त्यैकरूपिणी ललिताम्बिका श्रीशिवा शिवशक्त्यैकरूपिणी ललिताम्बिका 18th September 2021. Today, a little after 2 p.m., almost exactly 18 months ago, I set foot on a dance space. That was March 15th, 2020. In the 18 months, I have not danced. So did I miss the feel of bare feet on a stage? Did I miss the warmth of eyes, of bodies watching? The rasa and the alchemy of sharing, the sweat and perspiration and the energy of the movement, appreciation, applause, admiration. Did I miss it? Maybe just a little. But I did not dance for 18 months. March 15th, 2020, September 18th, 2021. So what was I doing dancing the waves? There was a lot that was happening in my mind and in my life. But one thing I realized, that the pandemic gave me an opportunity to pause, step back, witness, find out stuff about myself, and also about what can possibly be done. We spoke of the word pivot a lot. So how did the 18 months help me pivot? It was March 22nd, if you remember, a Sunday. It was supposed to be a trial nationwide lockdown with no hint of what was to come. On the eve of March 24th, we were told, shut. Shut the border, shut the gate, shut your doors. And that was our lockdown. We were all universally in the same space. Confused, befuddled. How were we going to live our lives? We were told 3 weeks, we were told. But the Gemini in me, I'm a twin, part of me, thinking now, what can I do? What can be done? I did not want to dance. So immediately a few days after March 25th began, one phone call to a friend in London, and the idea was born. The idea was boxed. Now this idea was because so many dancers, maybe many of you, were locked in, caged in, into your homes, your apartments, maybe even away from home. But you were locked in. The only time that you were able to go out, we were able to go out, was to buy our essentials. Using that moment, using the confusion, using the fear, the uncertainty, we birthed Boxed. The idea was 2 minutes of choreography from contemporary dancers. Cell phones in 2 different angles. Choose one location in your lockdown home. Anywhere in that same location, you would create 2 minutes of movement. Dancers responded, and how? Just to be able to have an opportunity to share their state of mind through an embodied experience. Some of them were completely alone, so balancing their phones with rope and tape, using books and poles, they danced in bathtubs, on couches, on tables, on windowsills, underneath the table, in their bathrooms, in the kitchen. That was Boxed. Video, please. Boxed had what in management terms would be called the early movers advantage. It created such a storm. Remember, we had 7 weeks, 10 premieres every weekend. We birthed 70 new videos, original content. Almost all the music was also original because we reached out across, we asked composers to compose, dancers to give up their time. And here I have to say that pulling together Boxed every single weekend was Natya's Kirti Kumar and Masoom Parmar as main editor and line producer. This was very interesting because they were hand-holding the dancers. For me, curation was not just calling somebody and say, give me 2 minutes of movement. No, remember, this was the early years of the pandemic. The month of April and May was so filled with confusion. So many people felt isolated and alone. To be able to speak to another artist who said, place the camera here. They would send photographs. How, is this okay? Is this okay? Kirti would say, place the camera on the top, place it on the ground. And the digital world allowed us that communication. So they would send the videos separately, and they would be edited professionally and seamlessly, and then premiered every weekend at 12 noon. Here I was very, very insistent as concept, as series ideator, that it's not just a professional presentation. We would have to acknowledge everybody's effort with payment. Yes, money. And that is something that when I told the dancers it would be a modest honorarium, but you will not do it for free, the first reaction was, really? I'm getting paid? Because in India, dancers have given away so much for too long for nothing. So Boxed was really envisioned as a professional series, ideated, conceived, supported, edited, and presented. At the end of every episode, we had a senior artist. Madhu Natraj was one among them, giving their thoughts and constructive critical suggestions. So each of the dancers, if they really liked what they were beginning the journey on, would continue and perhaps develop it into something else for themselves. After Boxed, it became quite clear that we were not going to be in a pandemic for only 3 weeks or 6 weeks, that this was going to continue. We were going to have to ride the wave. We would have to find a way of coping with this. So, Zoom from a noun became a verb. Are you Zooming today? So in between all the webinars and the endless interviews and things that were beginning to mushroom, and so much, mostly classical dance, flooding the airwaves, mostly for free, I was thinking of let me bring my love of cinema and dance. For those of you, you may know that early South Indian cinema had a very close and strong connection with classical Bharatanatyam. The great gurus, I'm talking of the greatest of gurus, Dandadapani Pillai, Meenakshi Sundaram Pillai, Varuvu Ramya Pillai, they all came from their villages to then Madras, and they were working in cinema. In fact, for all dancers, the very first time somebody is credited with choreography, it was called Natya Amaipu, which actually means dance setting, was for a Tamil film, and the person credited was Varuvu Ramya Pillai. Now, what I did was invite some people who were either students of these iconic dancers, film dancers, one of them being Kumari Kamala. Shobha knows about her. But it was so amazing. Kumari Kamala, who was then called first baby Kamala, Kumari Kamala, Kamala Lakshman, she was a phenomenon, a true phenomenon. And when we presented this series, which I called Talam Talkies, so many of Gen Z and the millennials had no idea who she was. They had no idea that the famous Aadu Pambe snake dance, Aadu Pambe, Vilayadu Pambe, Aadu Pambe, Vilayadu Pambe, which Kamala embodied, and it became such a hit that me during my Arangetram, when I was 9, had to do it. It was like the item that my generation of dancers had to do. So Talam Talkies brought together a series of connections between these famous dancers and classical Bharatanatyam. In the midst of the pandemic, now we're already in August, Boxed is over, we're now in August, and I had felt that my digital platform called nartaki.com was getting a bit staid. It was 20 years online, 30 years since it was created, and it was getting really a bit old-fashioned, fuddy-duddy, and I was trying to pull it in various directions, and I said, okay, push that aside. Let's start something else. So on August 15th, 2020, we birthed Neo Nartaki. Neo, of course, you know, is a universal term for new, because I felt we were listening to voices that were angry or complaining or arguing, but voices about identity, about sexuality, about marginalization, about binary, non-binary presence. And this was something that we had to address. I felt we had to address it. So Neo Nartaki was born as a safe space and a brave space. We had so many different discussions, the most recent being ampersand, which is dance and, which is really what I'm also talking about, dance hyphenated, what a dancer can also do. Can we have the Neo Nartaki video, please? So in its 1 year, we've tackled a lot of, I think, very important subjects that other people in the live arts have not been willing to tackle. And we've actually been able to continue and amplify these areas, which I'm really very happy about. I've also found that the younger generation, I'm talking of the dancers in their 20s and 30s, who are really afraid of articulating or tripping up or stepping on toes about how to address the new assertion of pronouns, you know, she, her, they, them, and everything that's become like almost mandatory now. When you have your Zoom presence, you're asked for your preferred pronouns. So even I was on a learning curve. And I'm still on a learning curve. So come August, and of course Neo Nartaki is continuing, then I took a moment to pause. We're already 6-7 months into the pandemic. We were sort of getting used to things. Finally, we started being able to have Amazon deliveries, and all our dancers were getting digital lights, ring lights, and camera stands, and people were upgrading their phones, and dancers like Kirti and Ramya and everybody suddenly became whiz filmmakers. And two of my young dancers who's danced with me just 3 years ago have become Instagram superstars with 200,000 followers. And I'm saying, what? When did this happen? Because this generation, as smart and clever as they have been able to take to technology, but I will come to the question later about how are they going to use it. So come December, when we were all sort of getting used to the pandemic and saying things will change, 2020 was cancel culture year, 21 is going to be such a much better year. January, we were sort of deciding to where we're going to travel. And I had a moment in early December where I was able to go to my ancestral temple, which was all shut. And in the quiet of the total silence of those beautiful, tall columns and in the hushed quietness, I was able to have a moment with the deity. And in a strange way, after so many years, after 6 decades of living on this earth, I finally felt like I was able to connect with my faith. And I'm saying this was a very important moment for me, because I think that if we all are comfortable with who we are, and I always say our geography is our history. Where we come from and how we grow up is a very important part of who we become and choose to become. So for me, that was a moment of epiphany that I really remember in my ancestral village of Tirukurungudi, which is deep south near Tirunelveli. Then came Margari, the sacred month, December 15th to January 15th, and I embraced my favorite patron saint Andal, the 7th century Tamil mystic who has been my shadow and companion in more ways than I can describe during the course of this talk. But Andal's poetry, a mystic saint, she grew up, she was a foster child discovered, she sang beautifully about her love for Krishna, and finally, as the legend goes, she merges with the Lord. But she, although being part of a living tradition, her songs, which are still sung and danced very popularly by Bharatanatyam dancers, had not crossed over the boundary of Tamil Nadu and maybe Andhra. So this time, I created a series called Andal's Garden. And boxed was everybody indoors. This mandate was everybody go outdoors, because Andal was sitting in a garden near the temple, and there she dreamt and sang and wrote songs about her beloved Krishna Ranganatha. So for the very first time, Manipuri, Mohiniyattam, Kathak, Kshatriya, they all engaged with Tamil sacred poetry. You already saw Madhu Nataraj's stunning dance film for the 4th Tirupavai Pashuram, Ari Malekkanna. And the group, the Natya STEM group, they did another one. And by far, of the 31 days of Margari, those two videos were the outstanding favorites. Yes. So, which brought me back to the fact that dance for camera is a special technique, a special skill, and I hope Natya will explore it more, because they have both the skill, the imagination, and the people, both behind and on screen. But for 31 days, at 6 a.m. in the morning, we offered a dance presentation. And in the evenings, we had talks about Andal, about the whole idea of what Margari meant. I'm going to show you just a brief 1-minute film that will just give you a glimpse of what Andal's Garden was.
Tadanam tihi tahatanam taka tahata taka dimmi tajanut tadanam dihi tahatanam taka tahata taka dimmi tajanut villi nagaratil Vishnu தன்மகளாக வந்த திரு ஆடி பூர நாள் வில்லி நகரத்தில் விஷ்ணு சித்தன் மகளாக வந்த திரு ஆடி பூர நாள் வில்லி நகரத்தில் வில்லி நகரத்தில் வில்லி நகரத்தில் ஆடி பூர நாள்.
So, one was of course Madhu. The other was Vidha Lal in Lodhi Gardens, Delhi. So, and a lot of these videos were shot on cell phones. We told the dancers, please don't hire HD cameras, work with the gadgets you have, because all of you know, most of you know, how smart the smartphones have become. So, Andal's Garden was, again, very, very successful, because the Tamil diaspora responded, because they were able to wake up at 6 a.m. IST, at whichever part of the world they were. And we brought an explanation of what it meant for a young teenage girl who lived in a very patriarchal time in the 7th, 8th century to do what she did, to have the courage to say, I will not have any man touch my body. If I live, it will be only for Krishna. So just as we were ready to welcome a new year, and just as we said, okay, now this is behind us, remember the vaccinations had just about begun. None of us had really been vaccinated by December, November. We were hearing things about Moderna and Pfizer and booster, and we knew of people who were flying here and there to get their vaccines, but it hadn't quite yet come to India. But we were very hopeful. Very, very hopeful. And then came the second wave. This second wave, I think we all know, was brutal. The first, we read about it. We read about migrant workers. We saw terrible images. The second wave came home. We lost people we knew. We lost people we loved. Both my children were in hospital. And for me, I'm considered this banyan tree. I'm the person, the go-to person for advice. I am a mentor. I had to seek professional help because I was so disturbed. Every day, we were all afraid to open Facebook. We were all afraid to look at the newspaper because it was a roll call of death and destruction and despair. And I think all of you, all of us, must have been in some dark place during those months of March, April, and May specifically, and maybe for part of June. So during that second lockdown, I said, okay, what am I going to do now? I don't want to do any more commissioned videos. I don't want to reach out to dancers and ask for this and that. I am going to do it all on myself, all by myself. And that's how I took to Instagram. On Instagram, I did live, just Instagram live. And I said, I'm going to harness my 360-degree love of food, of wine, of fashion, of travel, of craft, of dance and theater and movement and comedy and stand-up comedy, theater, poetry, graphic design, animation design, because 15 years of living in New York City, changes you forever. Right? The New Yorker doesn't really go out of you. So I said, this is the time. After all, we all have the sabha in our hands now, dancers. The sabha is in our hands because we are the presenters. So over 3 months, I have conducted a wide variety of talks. And I just want to give you a jhalak, a little glimpse of what I've been talking about. And it really has a huge range. And all of these interest me greatly. This is me, Anita, hyphenated, dance hyphenated to all these other areas of activity. Video, please. And I miss Maya Di because I know she'd have been a great topic for an Instagram live. I miss her. I think she would have really heartily approved and also given me more ideas about what to do and who to talk to. Yes, the Instagram continues, and I think it's a great way for me to just stay engaged. As I said, I haven't been dancing. But what are some of the lessons that I've learned? What have I observed? And this is something I wanted to share with all of you. The first and most important lesson that I really learned was use anger not as a negative emotion, but use the energy of anger positively. So I would say stay angry, but stay angry in an aware state. Be angry when media disses artists and says it's the least valued profession. Get angry when management people tell you that creative thinking and storytelling are the two most valued new area skills today during the pandemic, and yet artists are the lowest at the bottom of the totem pole. Stay angry, and don't just stay angry, react. Write to those media people, send out your Twitters. Don't make it a drawing room conversation. Get involved. That's really, really important. Get involved. Second, one of the things that has emerged during the pandemic is a lot of toxicity and hate. Twitter especially has just been flooded, actually polluted with so much, mostly with caste assertions and an attempt to silence, and with phrases like cede the space, pass the mic. Listen to the voices. Don't shut them out. Listen to the voices, dancers. Decide. Listen carefully. Listen, listen, listen. You don't have to react, but you have to listen. That's very, very important. Third, learn how to say no. Say no to people who want to exploit you for free. Say no to somebody who says, you're going to get a chance to dance. Say no for people who are going to build their brand on your blood, sweat, and tears. Say no. Learn how to say no. Dancers, you have a really hard time, but begin that. Learn to say no. Next, amputate toxic relationships. This pandemic has really upended so many friendships. I have lost friends that I thought I would never lose, but it has happened. If it does, it means the time has come to end it. So amputate, make yourselves lighter. You don't need toxicity around you. Being a dancer is hard enough. Having the determination and keeping the fire burning inside you is hard enough every single day. You don't need negativity. Another thing, dancers, do you have to dance all the time? Don't dance for a while. Read. Get to know the history of your form. Engage with it. Find out, however complex, however messy it is, find out what is that form that you have chosen to practice. Learn, read, again, listen. For all of us sitting here, we are privileged. We are here. We are able to be here. I'm able to be here. You're also able to be here. But do you know, 100 kilometers outside Bangalore, 75 kilometers outside Chennai, there is no connectivity. You can go to a folk dance school like I did, a fabulous Kutha school. I had no connectivity for 36 hours. So can somebody in Delhi, in the culture department said, ask them to record a video and send it, or have them live stream it? There's no connectivity. Are we aware of what our fellow artists are experiencing outside the cities? Very important. Another thing for dancers and for all and everybody here, whenever there's an arts event online, register. Pay your 300 rupees. It's less than a slice of pizza. And if you can't attend, I ask the organizer, can I share the registration link with somebody else? But the idea is to participate. We have to show up. Showing up is more than half the job done. We can't think in our minds we're going to be a dancer. We have to practice, not just the dance, but what does it mean to be an artist? Next. Have JOMO, not FOMO. Don't have a fear of missing out. Have the joy of missing out. Yeah. I mean, do you want to go everywhere, be seen everywhere, speak everywhere? No. Make your choices. Think JOMO from now on. Very important. I haven't finished. I just want to make sure that I've covered all my points. Just a minute. Yes. Tell your story to yourself. Are you interested in hearing a story about yourself? Learn how to articulate your practice. No more can you say, this is a 5,000-year-old form. It's not. No more can you say that, the spirituality of my form is so much higher than all of you plebeians. We cannot. What Manogna and the Aina Dance Company did in the foyer, if this was 15 or 20 years ago, purists would have come down on them with a sledgehammer. Like they did Ramli Ibrahim Sutra Dance Theatre and the lobby of the IIC 22 years ago, when he had his beautiful Odissi group around the large Urali and dancing beautifully and leading the audience into the IIC auditorium. Oh, were they flayed and criticized for polluting and corrupting and debasing. But what joy Ayana gave us today. What amazing ideas Ricky Cage gave us, that we are connected. Even the doctor who spoke in the morning, he told us about the atoms and the cells. We really are connected dancers. We really are. We belong to an ecology. And tell me, Atmanirbhar, we are told. We dancers are Atmanirbhar. We are a small-scale business in the very act of what we do. We create, we manage ourselves, we don't have agents, and we are actually putting out product. Which better example of make in India is there other than dance? The idea now is to take ownership of what you do, who you are. And let me tell you something, it's a sobering thought, but I'm going to tell you this. If you want to be an artist 24/7, you have to be willing to give up some things, which means some anniversaries, some birthdays, maybe even the passing of loved ones, if your art calls you somewhere else. That fire has to be burning so brightly that sometimes you give up relationships as well. I'm the first generation professional artist on both sides of my family. So my journey has been long, but I've used stubbornness and I've used anger to work positively for myself. So if I say I'm standing on the stage after 54 years since I finished my Arangetram, it means that nobody cares who my father and mother is, or what is the size of which bank I bank in. It's finally what I bring to the stage at this very moment. And that's the value, the power, and the vulnerability of the dance arts. We create in the moment we move. The minute we stop, the dance ends. It stays in your memory. So as dancers, as rasikas, dancers, we have to be advocates for our art. We must be able to co-opt other people. And not all of us can be leaders. If we can't be leaders, join in the aura of those who can. Be with people, not with other dancers. Go listen to a politician or an author or a musician or a poet or a graphic artist. Find out what's happening in the allied creative industries that you are a part of. And that's why it's important to unlearn, relearn, upskill, because in the pandemic and moving forward, when the world has forever changed, I want to hear it from dancers. Do you want to go and stand outside Chowdeya, ask for an opportunity, come to Madras, write a letter to some Sabha Mama and say, please give me a chance to dance, sir. How much money you want me to pay, sir? Do you really want to go back to those times? Definitely not. I told you, you're a Sabha Mama and Mami yourself. That cell phone in your hand. What are you going to do with that power? How are you going to engage? How are you going to collaborate? How will you network? How will you give space to other ideas? That's really important. And always remember, look at yourself, your reflection in the mirror, smile at those eyes and say, today I'm going to be the best that I can be. Because that's all you can do, is try to amplify who you are. Because if you're going to be comparing somebody else, you won't get there. So dancers, hyphenate yourself. You're an artist, but also you are. And those who will ride and dance through this wave of the pandemic are going to be those who can walk that long hyphenated line. I am a dancer, but I can also do this. I can manage, I can organize, I can choreograph, I can be a rehearsal director, I can be a photographer, I can be a chronicler. I would like to learn how to do. So if you want to stay in the live arts, you have to be willing to do what it takes to stay in the live arts. So be ready to learn all the time. And this way, even if that long hyphen becomes a wave, remember, just be that wave and just flow with it. Because that's the only way all of you are going to be able to say 10 years from now, 15 years from now, that I am a dance artist. I am an artist, and I'm proud to be one. Thank you.